Guys, I'm doing it. I am creating the ultimate ecosystem vivarium in an over 1,200-gallon custom-built tank. This ecosystem vivarium will be the biggest terrarium build I've ever done in my life. Complete with living ant colonies of mine, an array of tropical plants, fungi, predators, prey creatures, parasites, detritivores, and a waterfall and pond. Animals will be breeding and dying. They'll be eating plants. Animals will be eating other animals. And some will be breaking down dead animals to help fertilize plants in a constant biological cycling of nutrients throughout the vivarium, much like it happens out in nature. But managing such a food web is no easy task, and this vivarium project has honestly already forced me to apply all my skills and knowledge on animal husbandry, ant keeping, and biology that I've acquired over my entire lifetime. But you guys, the AC family, my beloved community of ant and nature lovers who watch this channel, have already been such a wealth of knowledge and supremely helpful at giving me advice on this undertaking. And this week, I ran a poll on my community tab asking, if you were to create the ultimate ecosystem vivarium, who would your apex predator be? The choices were a python, a chameleon, a tokegecko, and a tarantula. And based on over 60,000 votes, you guys voted for python, then tokegecko, followed by chameleon, and last, tarantula. But the poll spurred a huge debate in the comment section. One person said, so many votes for python, but do you have any idea what it'd take to sustain one? They can't exactly live off insects and other invertebrates in an enclosed ecosystem. This was true. I would still love to see a tokegecko, another said. A chameleon is much more fitting, as it would not be attacked by the ants, could contribute to maintaining their population balance, but wouldn't directly attack them, said another. Tarantula seems the most balanced for other small animals around it. Will be in one place a majority of the time and not need to eat everything it sees, someone postulated. Which, if you know tarantulas, could for the most part also be true. But what most people in the comment section insisted was this. Have to say, I'd rather see some smaller predators competing for resources than some OP apex predator just dominating. Smaller predators meaning frogs, smaller geckos, spiders, mantids, etc. Well, what if I told you that actually there is a way to house all of these apex predators and even the smaller predators in our ultimate ecosystem vivarium? But dear fellow animal lovers, don't scream at me yet, as I've had time to think this through, and I can't wait to share with you how I plan to do this. This is part 3 of creating an ecosystem vivarium, where I will have to manage the great food web that exists within the 4 glass walls that will make up our enclosed tropical world. Will we be able to build the ultimate ecosystem vivarium? Will all the creatures we choose to place inside form a successful ecological balance? Or will we fail at managing the food web and cause a complete collapse of the ecosystem we hope to build? It's time we talk about our final plans and discuss. Welcome to the story of how we build the ultimate ecosystem vivarium here on the AntsCanada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC fam. Enjoy. Guys, the glass for our grand vivarium arrives in just 2 more weeks. And it's my greatest honor to be constructing this huge ant vivarium with you all. And as mentioned in the past 2 episodes of this vivarium series, there couldn't be a better time to embark on such a huge vivarium building journey with you guys than now, as it is the perfect way to celebrate reaching 5 million subscribers on the channel. At the time of creating this second episode, there are less than 1,000 subscribers left until we hit that milestone. So close, guys. So, if you're watching and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do hit that subscribe button so you too could follow and be part of this truly groundbreaking milestone experiment. I truly appreciate the support and cherish every sub. Alright, now to address the big question, how do I plan on housing a meat-hungry python, an aggressive tokay gecko, a voracious chameleon, a massive tarantula, and a whole assortment of other smaller predators all in one tank, without it being a massive bloodbath, prey food famine, and ecosystem collapse. Well, I'll be explaining how I plan on pulling that off, as well as discussing two things I have to address regarding last week's episode on predators. You see, first, there's a type of animal a lot of you have wanted me to include in the Vivarium species list, but after thinking about it for a while, I've decided that I cannot, under any circumstances, include these animals you guys wanted in, due to personal safety reasons, which I'll cover later. And finally, regarding the wild-caught animals I featured last week, there was a surprise I saw when looking into their tank that left me baffled. I'll be asking you a ton of questions today, as I will be needing your help and opinions again on things. So like always, please stay tuned until the end for all that coming up. So AC family, let's begin. First, I want to address how I plan on working out having a python, a tokay, a chameleon, a tarantula, and other predators in a single tank, and it favoring an ecological balance within our vivarium. AC family, you will love this. And if you've already posted a comment against mixing all these animals together, please do leave it up in the comment section. But feel free to edit it if you change your mind by the end of this explanation. Alright, so let me start by defining what exactly I mean when I say we are creating the ultimate ecosystem vivarium. What does that actually mean? Well, have a look at this. This here is a terrarium I created a few years back in a jar. A challenge and collab from my boy Serpa Design, who by the way makes some awesome terrariums. Shout out to the Serpa squad. Now this particular terrarium in a jar was created for an ant colony, but even without the ant colony in it, this terrarium contained living plants, mosses, and a bunch of critters in its bioactive soils, like springtails and isopods. I could have completely sealed the whole thing up, and it would have been able to sustain itself and all the life inside it for years and years without me doing anything but giving the entire system some sunlight. The water would just continue to cycle inside the jar, animals would breed, feed, and die, and plants grow, get eaten, and also die. The entire system would be a mini, self-sustaining ecosystem in an enclosed space. Some of you may recall this terrarium, where I created a very bioactive forest floor around a tree stump. This was also created for an ant colony, but just like the jar terrarium, I could have sealed this terrarium up completely, and it would have thrived without my interference for years, with sunlight being its only requirement from the outside. I would call both these terrariums, had we sealed them up completely without ants in them, autonomous ecosystem vivariums, because they could simply self-sustain, self-replicate, self-provide, and I would only need to provide sunlight and watch as the living things within formed a perfect balance of sorts to continue thriving for years and years. But AC family, because both these worlds later became homes for an ant colony, they no longer could be sealed up completely, because the ant colonies would need extra food that the systems within could not provide. Namely, a regular supply of prey insects like crickets or roaches, and some sweet foods like honey. Yes, technically prey insects could breed inside, but the prey insects would eat up all the plants within the system and need more plant food to survive. So I would need to go in and add veggies or more plants into the system for the prey insects to eat. Plants take time to regenerate their leaves and grow, and if you know crickets or roaches for example, you know how quickly they can demolish a piece of lettuce. Suddenly the ecosystem isn't autonomous anymore. It's heteronymous, because we're going in and adding in a few things to keep the animals we need alive. So you see, the simple act of adding a larger creature or creatures, like an ant colony, necessarily takes an autonomous ecosystem vivarium up to the next level, a heteronymous ecosystem vivarium. And the more creatures you add, and the larger these creatures are, the more heteronymous the system gets, meaning to say the more we humans caring for the system would need to directly and actively add to the system from the outside if we expect to achieve some kind of conservancy of the various living creatures we hope to be living within. And so, as it relates to our ultimate ecosystem vivarium, which we hope to stock with an enormous amount of life forms for the purposes of our project, it must absolutely be a heteronymous ecosystem and not a completely sealed autonomous ecosystem with no influence from us humans from the outside. If we tried to make our massive vivarium with all its various animals an autonomous ecosystem by sealing it all up and not adding anything in afterwards, it would surely lead to a ton of animals dying and an overall death apocalypse for so many life forms, as the sealed system would achieve its own simpler balance to make up for the lack of provisions from us on the outside. Plants would be overeaten, certain animals might overpopulate, certain animals might exhaust food supplies, and the entire system would collapse. So what does all this have to do with being able to add all those different apex and smaller predators mentioned at the start of the video into our vivarium? Well, now that we've distinguished an autonomous ecosystem vivarium versus a heteronymous ecosystem vivarium, here's where the plan for our vivarium gets really interesting. AC family, listen to my idea. So I wanted the aim of our vivarium project to essentially be to construct a 1,200-gallon chunk of wild tropical forest space, meaning a 10-foot long by 33 inches deep by 6-foot tall block of natural wild space. Now, if you were to go outside into any forest and block off that section of natural space, the amount of life concentrated into that space may be a lot with various plants and animals, but what are the chances that a python and a tokegecko and a chameleon and a tarantula and a bunch of smaller predators all share that space all at once? Well, realistically, pretty slim, right? Most large predators in nature are more spread out, claiming their own hunting space and chasing off any other similarly sized animals who might compete for the same food. So AC family, after thinking about all of your feedback and what you guys wanted to see in our vivarium, I've come up with a cool way in which we can all have the best of all worlds. Here's where I introduce you to my concept of planned biological events. So listen to this. Going back to the block of natural space, if we were to watch a time lapse of that space, we would inevitably see a ton of action, ever-changing and dynamic. We would see animals and insects coming and going, random plants dying and being eaten, plants growing from new seeds sprouting from the soils, etc. The various life forms in that block of space would not be static and simply limited only to that 1,200-gallon worth of space, like an autonomous ecosystem, but would be constantly coming and going into that space as animals move in and out, and plant seeds are carried by winds to grow and die, thereby bringing in and taking away nutrients to the system, with all living things in the space interacting, much like a heteronymous ecosystem. So going back to our great vivarium, I think for all of this to work, we as the caretakers need to schedule planned biological events in order for the ecosystem to thrive. Such events can include, for instance, spontaneously dropping in a piece of fruit, which theoretically could have fallen from the treetops above, for vivarium creatures to feed on. If certain plants were to die off due to being overeaten by herbivores, we would need to simply plant new plants within the tank. Periodically, we would need to go into the system like this to add things in order to keep it going. And the coolest part? These biological events we make happen don't only have to be with fruits and plants, but can also include the actual animals. See where I'm going with this? So, how can we work it out so that we can add our python, a tokegecko, a chameleon, and a tarantula into our ecosystem vivarium without wreaking havoc on our ecosystem? Well, just add them in at different times, meaning we cycle the apex predators. We could have my 9-year-old green tree python Valentino living in our ecosystem vivarium for 3 months, where he could only eat mice, which I would need to throw in once or twice a month. The skin he would shed and the poop he would excrete while living inside would be amazing nutrient-dense food for the soil creatures, which would then go on to poop and enrich the soils with bioavailable nutrients for growing plants within the vivarium. Then, whenever we want, we could simply move him out and move in a tokay gecko, which would hunt prey insects, who've had some time to proliferate in the vivarium, simply due to the fact that Valentino wouldn't eat insects the whole time he was in there. The tokay would now have a feast on prey insects, and might even pick off any small predators that failed to hide in the terrarium, like spiders, other small lizards, and frogs. Then when we feel he'd done his job at consuming a significant supply of prey animals, we'd move him out, and move in a chameleon, which would feed on just insects and nibble on plants. If ever we feel the plant life was suffering, we could add in more plants, or offer vegetables on the forest floor for the chameleon to eat. Or if we felt the prey animal populations were suffering, we could also add more of those. These planned biological events would mimic the natural movement in and out of animals and plants that would typically occur in nature, in our theoretical 1,200-gallon natural wild space. Finally, after some time, we can swap out the chameleon with a tarantula, which would usually stick to a burrow location and wait for prey to come to it, and also not eat once filled for possibly weeks, which would give prey animals time to replenish. We could even add in a weaver ant colony to dominate the vivarium for a bit, and then just cut their nest plant out whenever we wanted, or felt they were eating too much or growing too big. The possible apex predators that could have a turn in our vivarium are endless, so long as they're easy to catch once their time is up. So you see, we as the ecosystem caretakers must play God a little bit and study what's happening in our vivarium, take a regular inventory of plants and animals, so we can be able to determine what the next oncoming biological event must be. Kind of like tending to a garden, using animals and plants as our additives and takeaways. Addition of things into and taking things out of our vivarium would be intentional and with purpose. At least in this way, we can have all our apex predators taking a turn in the vivarium, while also having other smaller predators roaming the tank, and having some sort of ecosystem happening within that resembles a food web. It's definitely more work than an autonomous ecosystem, but for me, it's 1,000 times more rewarding to watch all the different things that occur when we routinely add and take away organisms to the system. We also don't have to give all apex predators equal time in the vivarium. For instance, if our tokay gecko looks like it's eating all other frogs and small house geckos in the tank, we can simply remove it after a day or two to preserve our house gecko and frog population. While other more steady apex predators that don't need a ton, like our python or tarantula, can stay a bit longer. We will just have to be the active managers of the food web in our vivarium. Oh, and by the way, when our apex predators aren't in their grand vivarium, they would be living in their own separate enclosures, kept simply as our beloved pets in the ant room, as normal. So what do you guys think about this idea? The natural world is intrinsically biodiverse, so I figured so too should our ecosystem vivarium, right? And this was my solution to make it work. But now I ask you guys, do you think this system will work? Let me know in the comments. Now there is one predator that a lot of you guys really wanted to see added into our ecosystem vivarium, which I initially thought was an awesome idea, but I later realized was actually a bad one. I'm so sorry to say this, guys, but for those of you wanting poison dart frogs in the system, I've come to the decision to never add these into our vivarium. And the reason is this. These poison dart frogs, for which there are 175 known species, each with their various vivid and gorgeous colors, are named after the toxic mucus they produce in the wild that is potent enough to kill several humans. But in captivity, they're deemed safe because they don't end up producing the same toxins as their wild counterparts. The toxins that wild dart frogs produce is said to come from the specific ants, termites, and beetles that make up their diets in their natural habitats. In captivity, we hobbyists feed them crickets and or fruit flies, which don't possess the components that form that said poison. Though we humans aren't sure which dart frog food item in the wild leads them to being so deadly, ants is one of the suspected contributors to their poison. And well, our vivarium will definitely be home to some ant colonies. So do you see where I'm going with this? I don't want to find out if the ants we put in cause our captive raised poison dart frogs to become poisonous and have one of the frogs land on my hand, which may have a little scrape from working around the tank, and me dying a painful death. Knock on wood, no thank you, not worth it. Plus, if we have apex predators like a python, tokay, or tarantula in there, I don't want them to be eating a $30 to $70 dart frog, only for them to also die. Not the most financially sound biological event management in our vivarium, if you ask me. So sadly, sorry dart frog fans, but we'll just have to create another dart frog terrarium one day. But I do feel our ultimate ecosystem vivarium has a lot of potential for us to learn and gain insight on the workings of real wild ecosystems and on how ants fit into the ecological picture of things. Like, don't you wonder what would happen if we dropped a dead animal into our ecosystem terrarium? Would ants come and claim it first to defend it from thieves? Which we always say happens whenever we do ant feeding videos. But now we'd be able to witness them doing it in real life. Would forest roaches emerge from hiding to feed on a piece of fruit we drop in? Would that in turn draw in the predators to the scene? What would happen if we threw in a handful of birdseed into the vivarium? Or introduced an army of caterpillars into the system? How about a praying mantis egg case? So many interesting experiments we could do to learn from. And it would be so interesting to watch how our ecosystem vivarium reacts to these planned biological events to achieve balance. What other cool events could you think of that we could add and watch play out in our vivarium? Let me know in the comments. It's getting close to the arrival date of our glass, and I love that together we are doing our due diligence, researching, discussing, and collaborating on ideas so that this ecosystem vivarium project will truly be one of a kind and groundbreaking. I am so honored to have all of you AC family walking this incredible journey of nature discovery with me. As you guys have always done over the years, we've been creating stunning worlds for our ants and beloved critters. And it looks like we'll be hitting the big 5M subs very soon, if not already by the time you watch this episode. And that, AC family, is one epic biological event to celebrate. So again, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all your friends and family to get them involved as well in this ultimate ecosystem world creation. Thank you all for watching and supporting the ants. It's Ant Love forever. Wait a sec. What is that? What is that? Whoa! But wait a second. How is that even possible? OMG. No way! Hope you can subscribe to the channel as we upload every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video to help us keep making more. It's Ant Love forever.